everyone. Michelle Seidling here with another episode of Food Experience Unplugged. Today, we'll explore the power of understanding yourself, who you are, and how you function. Here to help us do that is Nicole Bitar, an optimization coach and Kundalini yoga teacher. This podcast is available on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. Please be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to be informed as new episodes become available. If you enjoyed today's episode or any of our episodes, please rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. As always, check out our website at foodexperienceunplugged.com for some resources as you begin your health journey. Nicole Bitar, welcome to Food Experience Unplugged.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, we are excited to have you as an optimization coach and a Kundalini yoga teacher. That sounds amazing, and I can't wait to hear the background story on that. To get started, will you take a moment to introduce yourself and tell us what brought you to this point in your life and your career, and why optimization coaching, why Kundalini yoga, among all the other yoga choices and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to practice law. I was a litigator at one of the largest law firms in the Southeast. And growing up, even since middle school, I wanted to be an attorney. Like I would walk around with Harvard Law School sweatshirts on. And so this was always my goal to become an attorney. And so I worked really hard to that end, and I planned and prepared for that almost my whole life. And I went to Duke Law. I went on a scholarship. And then I went on from Duke Law to then work in this law firm as a litigator. So I practiced corporate litigation. And so basically what happened was I had everything that I thought that I had wanted. Everything that I had worked so hard for, everything that I had planned for, I had it. I had the good job. I was making a lot of money. I had the beautiful home and near the city, and I got to go on vacations and do all the things. So it was like on paper, my life really looked perfect. But I would say, deeply unhappy. And I didn't know why. It just wasn't clear to me. It was like, I should be happy. I have everything that I thought I wanted. I have everything that I worked so hard for. I should be happy. And I wasn't. And this bothered me because, why aren't I happy? Why I have everything. And so what ended up happening was I ended up actually leaving my job. And this was really one of the hardest decisions that I've ever made. It's one of the hardest things that I've ever done. But it was like, I'm unhappy. I don't completely know or understand why. And of course, throughout this time that I'm practicing law and doing all these things, I'm also trying to find answers to this. So I'm doing all these different things to try to help myself in the little bit of time that I have to do that. But nothing seems to be working, and I'm deeply unhappy. And I've been in this job now. I was in about my 6th year of practice, and so it was like, well, the biggest thing in my life was my job. So part of me was like, well, this must be the problem. The job must be the problem. There was another part of me that kind of really wondered if it was in fact the job, but it was like something in my life has to change. And so I did end up leaving that job. And when I left it without a plan. Because it's like, even though part of me was like, I think this job is the problem, there was another part of me that thought, if I just simply move on to another job, I'm going to feel the same. Like there was just a part of me that was like, I'm going to feel the same if I just move on to another job. And the thing was, working at a big law firm like that, I had a lot of opportunity to even have them help me to get another job. Plus, I had a great resume. So it wouldn't have been that complicated or hard for me to get another job. But it was like there was this thing in me that was like, that's not going to be the solution. And so I felt like I need to get away from this job. I need a break from it. And, if I have that, I'll have some clarity. Like I'll be able to kind of figure some things out. And so But even so, it was an extremely hard decision to leave that job because I felt like I was leaving everything that I had worked so hard for. And I felt too like for an attorney, I was in a very good position. I had a very good job. Um, and so after I left that job, it was like I didn't really have a plan as to what I was going to do. I kind of felt like something has to change in my life. Um, and so, but there was a part of me that thought like, okay, like give me 2 weeks away from this job and I'll figure something out, right? Because the job, it was a high pressure, high stress job. I mean, it was a very good job for an attorney, but we did work a lot. And so I thought, okay, give me a couple weeks away from this job and I'll get some clarity. I'll figure things out. And that is not what happened at all. So I left that job, and after I left it, it was like I I realized that I had been basically operating on adrenaline probably most of my life. And so when that went away, when that stress went away, when that stress went away that was keeping me going, it was like I just completely collapsed. And it was like my body just ached everywhere. I was so tired. I felt terrible. Like it was hard to drive somewhere, which was such a fascinating thing. Coming from this job where I'm like performing at this really high level, to basically being like, it's hard to drive. Like that was just really shocking. Um, but the other thing that I realized that was more surprising was that you would think that having accomplished everything that I accomplished, that even though I left that job, having those accomplishments would still matter to me, would still mean something to me, would still make me feel a certain way. But what ended up happening was I felt completely and totally worthless. It was like that job went away, every bit of self-worth I had or thought I had, it's like it went away with it.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and so I felt terrible about myself. Probably the worst I feel like I've ever felt about myself. And it's like it mattered not at all of the things that I had done. And what I came to realize from this was that I really didn't have a sense of self-worth as something that was just mine, as something that was just me. My worth came from all of these things outside of me. And that's what I was looking for to give my self-worth. And as soon as those things went away, any sense of worth I had just went right along with it. So after I left, I basically realized like I'm not in a good state. Like my body's not in a good state. I'm not in a healthy state, and I'm not in a good state mentally, in a sense, and that I don't have any sense of just internal worth and value. And so what I did was I just threw myself completely and totally into like I want to find answers. Like I want to find answers. I want to find out like you know um, can I have sustained, vibrant health in my body? Can I bring my body back to a state of health? And then I also, too, wanted to understand, really about myself, about like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling so worthless? Why do I feel like I lack value? Um, and then also, too, I wanted to understand, like, okay, does success always have to come at this price? And of this price of being overwhelmed, this price of being stressed out, this price of sacrificing, or is there something else? Like, is there something else to life? And so I threw myself wholly and completely into this, and I made this my full-time job. Like this was what I did. This is what I invested my time in. This is what I invested my money in. And so what I did is I just started researching and reading and seeing all of these different practitioners and training in a number of modalities, like becoming certified in a number of modalities. And finding out everything I could about health and trying everything I could. So whether it was like I bought a sauna and I did floats and I did all these different cleanses and I learned how to create flower remedies. I did colonics. It's like everything I could find, everything I could do, like I did it. And I really gave it um, a good try. I didn't just jump from one thing to the next. I really tried things to see, okay, is this working?
Oh.
And so I'm doing all of these things, for my health. I'm doing all of these things to try to figure out why, I have no sense of worth, why I generally I feel so bad. And I'm seeing all these different practitioners. And I tried things that I think some may consider quite out there, just because I really had no, it didn't matter to me what it was. All that mattered was I was looking for a result. I was very open minded as to what it could be. I wanted a result. So after a year and a half of doing this, making this my absolute full time job, I would say I was in a worse state than I was when I was working, which
Mm.
was, yeah, that was just so discouraging to me. I would say it was actually one of the kind of the darkest times in my life. I would say my health actually got worse, surprisingly. And I felt worse about myself because it was like kind of the longer it went on too. It was like it looks like I kept feeling worse about myself. And even though I was doing all of these different modalities and doing all this stuff, I was feeling worse and I was feeling confused. And so it was a really dark time in my life. And I started to, question. I started to think, well, maybe this is just what life is. We sacrifice, we're in stress, we're in overwhelm. And life is just okay. We have a couple minutes of joy here and there, maybe on the weekend. But and that's just what life is. And it's just not great. And you know, interestingly enough, when I was working, I would go into the office and I would, for some people be like, "Oh, hi, how are you today?" And they would respond this is kind of like a common response. It was like living the dream, like this sarcastic kind of response. And I
Mhm.
just thought, I just I want to live the dream. I want to live the dream. And all the people I'm working with, we've worked so hard to get here. We've done so much to get here. I want to live the dream. I don't want this kind of mediocre existence. And I feel I was even talking to a colleague at one point, and I was just like, well, do you love what you're doing? Are you passionate about it? Do you wake up excited in the morning to start your day? And it was like, no. But but we make a lot of money, and we have a good job, and we have it better than a lot of people. And so this is just you should be happy, basically.
Mhm.
And there was a part of me that just I couldn't accept that. It was like it sucked the life out of me. And so a year and a half into leaving my job, and again, I want to make very clear, I'm not criticizing my job, nor and there were some people in my job who were very happy in that job. Um, but so a year and a half after I leave this job, I'm feeling worse than I did before. And I'm really starting to think okay, these people were right. That's just what life is. I should have just somehow, I don't know how, made myself accept this and just continued on with my job. And so, of course, I could have gone back to the practice of law at that point in time. I wasn't that far removed from it, but there was still this part of me that was like, that just can't be it. It just can't be. And so I kept trying different things. And one day I tried a Kundalini yoga class. And so I had done yoga for years, but I did not know what Kundalini yoga was. I never heard of it, but I turned on this class and I just was like, again, I was very open minded, I'll try anything. And
Mhm.
so after this class, I felt different, and I noticeably different. And so I continued to take these classes. And the more I took them, the better I felt. I started to feel energized. I started to feel inspired. The aches and pains in my body, they started to go away. Some of the health issues that I was dealing with and that I had been dealing with for years started to go away. And more than that, something really interesting happened, which was that I started to feel worthy and valuable in and of myself. Not from something I was doing or something I had accomplished. I started to feel a sense of inner worthiness and value. And so I went on then to train in Kundalini Yoga, not because I thought I was going to teach it or anything, just because that was kind of what I was doing. I was just, if I was training all sorts of things to see, what worked. And as I got trained in it, I realized I started to understand, okay, this is why this is working. This is why this is giving me the results that it's giving me. And again, the more I did it, the more results I got and the better I felt. And so I went on, I got trained in Kundalini yoga. And then what happened was, it was like, as I was doing Kundalini yoga, it was giving me such a clearer mind. And I was starting to feel just so inspired. And as my mind started to get clear, it was like I started to see, okay, why didn't certain things that I was doing, why didn't they work? And what is it that does work? And what is it that is here, kind of like like ultimately causing me to feel this way or that way? And what can change that? And so as I started to get this clarity about that, I started to kind of use these things that I was having clarity about to take myself into even greater and greater states of health, of joy, of creativity. And so then what has ultimately transpired from all of this is that I ended up creating my own programs for what I call an optimized life. So, meaning like the life that we are capable of living, a life where we live in states of abundance, where we live in states of joy, where we're really expressing our own creativity and our uniqueness, where we're expressing the love that we are. And so I created these programs, and then I incorporate in them Kundalini yoga, and I teach Kundalini yoga. But what I ultimately kind of was doing here, like I still could have gone back to practice law, but it was like I realized, like, okay, like we can have a very different experience than the experience that we're having. And it doesn't take, like, what I realized was, like, that was not my issue. The job was not the problem, right? And so it's like people can have a very different experience than what they're having right where they're at. It's not like they have to leave this or that. And I just, it was such a travesty to me when I was, in the job I was in, being around all of these people again who had worked so hard and who were so talented. And, we might have these ideas of corporate law and corporate law firms, but I will tell you the people that I worked with were genuine, they were kind, they were committed, and they worked with a lot of integrity. And so it was such a travesty to me that we've got these people so talented who've worked so hard, they're living lives that they're like, it's okay. Or they're living lives where they're super stressed out, right? Or they're overwhelmed, right? And it's just like, that's such a travesty to me. And I know that my profession, being a lawyer, that's not the only profession where people are like that. That's people generally. Like, people generally hold within them such creativity and such kindness and such love. And generally then that became my life's like mission, really, to show people like you can have such a different experience, and it's possible for you right here, right now, no matter what circumstance that you're in.
Sure. Wow, that is amazing on your journey. With all of that, now you mentioned, many people they've got this seemingly great job, but there's something missing about it. Is it a question of what you know now, just adding Kundalini yoga into their life, or is there really more to it than that?
So there's definitely more to it than that. Kundalini yoga is going to it's going to help people, just because the way that the practice works. It's a very interesting practice, and that working not just it's not working simply like flexibility. I think a lot of people, when they think of yoga, they think of flexibility. Yoga, of course, isn't limited to that. I'm not saying other yogas are limited to that, but that is a lot of what people think of as like flexibility and like relaxing. Kundalini yoga, what it does is it's working the physical body. And when it's working the physical body, it's working things like the nervous system, the glandular system, the immune system, the circulatory system. So these are really kind of critical systems. And I had never before realized, like, I need a healthy and balanced nervous system. Like, that's critical. Kundalini yoga is also working. It's also working on the mind to help bring forth clarity of mind, to help you control and direct your mind. Kundalini yoga also works on an emotional level. So it helps people rid themselves of suppressed emotions and deal with current emotions. And it also works on an energetic level. So when we're dealing with like the electromagnetic field or the aura or the chakras. And so basically what it's doing is like working physical, emotional, mental, and it's doing this all in one practice. And so it's really giving a lot of bang for the buck. And so I would say you take Kundalini yoga, you're certainly going to reap a benefit from Kundalini yoga. I do think if you want to live like really the kind of your optimized life, I do think that there's more to it than just Kundalini yoga, but I think Kundalini yoga puts people in a very good position and it helps them like in that kind of on that path and to do that. But I do think that there's more to it than Kundalini yoga, which is why I created the programs that I created.
Okay. So is Kundalini yoga is kind of the stepping off point toward understanding yourself, toward other aspects of physical and mental health?
I would say it's probably more than a stepping off point. I would say it's almost like for me, it's almost like part of my life. It's part of like an understanding of like it shows me in a sense like who I am and how I function. It kind of helps you understand more of like yourself and tapping into that. Like, I mean, we're in physical bodies. And so what's happening with our physical body, it's impacting us in so many ways. It's impacting our like how we're thinking, it's impacting how we're feeling. It's like, so I think that like Kundalini yoga, what I do is I use it, I teach it separately, but I also use it in my programs. And the interesting thing about Kundalini yoga is it's very I would say it covers a lot in the practice. There's like a lot of things that it covers. It's quite broad. And so some of the practices, they take like 3 minutes and you can do them while you're sitting at your desk. And so what I do in my programs is I look at, okay, what is this person's situation? How much time do they have? Like what's available to them to do, and what is like, are there specific things that they need to work on, like their nervous system, or are they dealing with certain types of emotions, or are they dealing with a lot of fear about something, or are they dealing with like a lot of anxiety? And then you can actually take Kundalini yoga practices and just say, okay, this practice is for the nervous system. Do this practice. This practice is if you have like a lot of suppressed anger, do this practice. So it's quite kind of dynamic and I would say very flexible in how it can be used. And so I think it's something that can be used to, yes, it can kind of catapult someone in a sense, like it did to me. Like it really started my transformation. It's something I still use. So it's quite flexible and it can work in a lot of different ways.
Okay. Now you mentioned your program, you're an optimization coach. So how does that, what is involved in that, and how does that couple with the Kundalini yoga?
Yeah, so I have optimization programs, and in those programs, I've written the programs. So the programs, what they include a number of recordings. So in the first program, there's 12 weeks of recorded information. Same with the second program. And in those, I basically lay out what I would call the methodology for living your optimized life. And the reason I do recordings is because it's an efficient and effective way to convey information. So people can listen to the recordings while they're washing dishes, while they're going for a walk. And what was important for me is that like it's one thing to have like it's like yes, you want an understanding of how to kind of live your optimized life, but it has to fit into someone's schedule. People are busy, like that's the state that we live in. And so if we really want to move the dial for people, we have to say, okay, what's realistic for these people to do where they're currently at. And so what I did is I did all of this recorded information to lay out this methodology clearly, but also to lay it out in a way where it's super efficient and effective for people. And then also in the programs, what I do is we have one-on-one sessions where I coach people, because what I found is that just listening to the recordings and understanding the information, it's a lot of times not enough, because people really do live in their own kind of world and their own kind of bubble. And it's really beneficial to have someone to help you see, okay, like this is what you're doing here and this is how you can implement this. And so I didn't just want to give recordings and then have people just kind of go off. I really wanted to coach them and be with them and support them through it so that we're really getting a result, because that's what I care about. I care about you actually getting a result. And then the Kundalini yoga, what I do is as part of the program, you get the recordings, you get the coaching, and then the Kundalini yoga is also part of it. And so you can either join my weekly live stream classes, or what I do is I'll just customize it to the person. Like, okay, this is what you're dealing with. Here's this meditation to do. Here's this exercise to do. Or we had this class on this day. Here's the recording of this class. Do this class. So I use the Kundalini yoga because I do think it's such a valuable practice. So I do use it within my programs and coaching.
Okay. Now, tell me about you focus a lot on understanding, your own power within, coming to terms with yourself, understanding yourself. Can you talk a little bit more about that and why it's important in your life and your decision making?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I came to understand was like I said this I think before, but the problem was not my job. Like that was not the problem. And a lot of people think like the problem is this circumstance that I'm currently in or that I'm currently having. And what I realized was like that the issue, the reason that I wasn't happy, it was because I lacked an understanding of myself and how I function. And that may sound really kind of like I wouldn't have said like if you'd have asked me that then I would have been like, of course I understand myself and how I function. You know what I mean? Like of course I like that's just like, but I really didn't. I really didn't. And I actually what I'm seeing is that that's actually common. And here's kind of the way to like know this. If someone's living in states of stress or overwhelm or unhappiness or struggle or strife, um, what's happened they don't actually understand themselves and how they function because your fundamental nature a person's fundamental nature who they really are at like core who they really are is I mean they're love through and through they are abundance they are creativity they are intelligence they have a geniusness within them and so if you're experiencing something if someone's experiencing something other than that it's actually a departure from their natural state, who they fundamentally are. And so it's like when you, and so there is a lack of understanding there. And what people think is, or kind of like what a general kind of thoughts are about this is like, that's just what life is. And of course, I was told that by my colleagues, like, this is just what life is. Like, life is, it's not great, right? Like, and the thing is like, this has become normalized. Like, it's become normalized to live in states of disease. It's become normalized to live in states of stress or living in states of this is wrong or that is wrong or I'm a victim to this or that. It's become normalized. It's not normal. It's not our fundamental nature. It's not who we are. And so, if someone's living in states like that, I would say you actually lack an understanding of who you are and how you function. And if you understood who you are and how you functioned, you would have a very different experience. And that's really what changed my life. That's what transformed my life was me understanding who I was and how I functioned.
Okay. So thinking back, with your law career, all of that, do you feel like at that point you maybe did not understand how you function and your own inner power, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I didn't understand it at all. I would say I was living from this. We have a tendency to do this. Like we are very powerful beings. And so if we want to live in these states that are quite removed from who we really are, we actually get to do that. We can choose to do that and we can have that experience. And I would almost say like it was almost like I was living from this like state that I wasn't. I was like living as
Mm,
this person that I actually wasn't. It's because I did not understand my fundamental nature. I didn't understand who I was. And so, like, for instance, one of the things, like, so this would be like an example. It's like, I said this after I left my job. I felt like I was like worthless and I lacked all value. Right. And so, this, I held that belief within me that I was worthless and lacked value. I held that belief since I was a child. And so, what I actually did was, I see this now, I didn't then, but what I actually did was I was constantly trying to make myself worthy. I was constantly looking for things outside of me to make myself worthy because I held this belief that I was not worthy in and of myself. It's like I need to do these things to make myself worthy. And so I went to law school, interestingly enough, really from that belief. Like I wanted to make myself worthy. And growing up in my home, they were like, I thought that there were two noble professions in the world. They were doctor and lawyer. And I chose lawyer. And it was like, in fifth grade, why did I think I wanted to be a lawyer? Like, why did I really think that? And why did I continue on that path, especially when like law school wasn't this like super fun experience for me? I actually didn't like it, but I stayed, right? And then I became a lawyer and I actually really wasn't really happy in that profession. Um, but like I see now I entered I thought I wanted to become a lawyer. I did all the things to become a lawyer because I thought that I lacked value, and I was doing all of these things to try to get value, to try to make myself valuable. And then the problem was the second they went away, it was like, whew, the any kind of concept of value or worthiness I had went with it. Now, if I really understood who I was, I would know that I have an innate and internal value that is not something that I have to earn. It's not something like I'm not here to like prove myself or prove my value or create value within myself. It's actually something that I have. And when you tap into and know your own inner value and your own inner worthiness, what happens is from there, it's like this stuff just flows out of you. Whereas before, what I was doing, it was just like I was in this place of I lack value, I lack worthiness, I have to work, 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 work to get it. And my life was just hard work after hard work after hard work. Because I wasn't tapped into this like, oh no, I actually have this internal value and worthiness within me. And when I tap into that, oh my goodness, I'm actually really creative. And like I can do all of these things. And so, but again, it was because I didn't understand, like I didn't understand who I was. I didn't understand how I functioned. And so I was like operating based on these things that basically weren't true. And so I was getting results then that were very consistent with how I was operating. It was like, I'm not worthy, I need to prove myself. And so my whole life was, I'm not worthy and I need to prove myself. And you
Mhm.
know, even though I did have some level, like it's like it helped me a little bit when I finally became a lawyer. Like maybe I felt like a little bit better about myself, but I really didn't. And I think that like part of me like knew that like I did all these things and I accomplished all these things and it was like different faces, different places, but I felt the same. But
Okay.
when you really tap into like, okay, like, and again, everyone has their issue. Like for some people, it may not be a worthiness value issue. For me, it was. But when you really tap into you, that's where I really saw my life transform. And Kundalini yoga, what Kundalini yoga is ultimately doing, it's doing just that. It's really tapping you into who you are and really the power that you hold, the creativity that you hold.
Mm,
Something that you're not, it's not like this thing that's coming from outside of you. It's more of an
okay.
inward, outward, like inside to the out, as opposed to like you kind of getting all this stuff from the outside to kind of make yourself feel good.
Sure. Now that beckons the question, is it possible to have a demanding career such as law or medicine or any other career, or whether it's various levels of demand, I suppose, and then, but yet understand yourself regardless of your career choice?
I would say absolutely, 100%. If I were to go back into the law profession now, my experience would be so very different. And we're meant to engage with this experience. We're meant to, do these different things, do these different professions, and for some people too. So the other thing is that, and this is one of the things I teach in my programs is everybody has their own unique gifts and talents. And so there's kind of a lot of things that come into play here, but you can certainly have a demanding, I would say, or like a challenging job. I think we want that, quite frankly. Like my job was really demanding and it was very challenging, but there was a part of me that was kind of like, I liked it, right? Because like, we like challenges, we're up for them, but it's just like, it changed, like, when we're really tapped into who we are, those things like the demanding jobs, they become challenging. They become more exciting, something that you're like really showing yourself what you're made of in a sense,
Mhm,
as opposed to this thing like, oh, I have to do this and it's just depleting me and wearing me out. But
mhm,
what I was saying too is, one of the things is that we all do have our own unique gifts and talents. And when we tap into those, when we're operating from that place, we actually get energy. So when we're not operating from a place of our gifts and talents, what we do is we're putting something out there into the world, and we actually deplete ourselves. When we operate from a place of our own gifts and talents, what happens is we actually energize ourselves. So
mhm,
if you're in a job, say for instance, that's really in alignment with your own gifts and talents, you're going to be energized by that job. Whereas if you're in a job that's not in alignment with your gifts and talents, it will deplete you. And
okay.
so, for instance, it was in my job, I there was one attorney in particular who, oh my goodness, he loved this job, and he would like lament about the days like, oh, I used to work in New York City and I used to work till 2 a.m. every day, and then I'd come home, get maybe a couple hours of sleep, and go back to work. It was just the best thing ever, and He wasn't doing that anymore because he had a family,
Mhm.
and he just like missed that so much. And I felt his energy. Like I loved being around him because I like I felt how much he really liked that job, and I wanted to feel that way. I just like didn't. Um, and so for him, really, he was really, I would say, just right in alignment with his gifts and talents. And that job just was like, it was right there. And so for him, that job, he worked way more than I what felt like I could ever work, that I was ever capable of working. That job energized him.
Mm.
So he was having, like, we're in the same job, but he's having a very different experience of the job than I was having. And so part of it too is like, people go into jobs for all sorts of reasons. But if you understand who you are and you understand, including your own gifts and talents, you're going to choose something that's in alignment with those. And so that's going to actually, it's going to energize you. And in fact, you'll be that person who like outperforms everyone. Like this attorney was like, he outperformed everybody. Nobody could keep up with this guy because he was just so, it was just so for him. And so it changes things so much when you're operating from a place of like, I know who I am, I know how I function, I know my gifts, I know my talents, and I'm doing something in alignment with that. It's a totally different
Mm.
experience.
That is amazing. So, how do people get started, regardless of their career choice, where they are in their career path? How do you come to understand yourself and really tap into those talents and gifts that we all possess?
Yeah, so well, that's really what my programs are about is
Mhm.
really teaching people how to do that. And what I do is I start with um, helping people to understand really the great knowing and creativity and worthiness and value that they hold within, and also the guidance that they hold within. And that's really what I start with. And I
Mm.
start with laying out for them very clearly. I do these very interesting readings where I actually set forth for them. I use a methodology that I was taught by somebody else, but where I set forth for them what their gifts and talents are, and also how they're specifically structured to thrive in this experience. So, not only do we all have unique gifts and talents, but we also are structured to thrive differently. So, different environments, like, and so this is another thing about like the job situation. Like, if someone's in an environment where they thrive, they're going to have a totally different experience than someone's in an experience where they don't thrive, because again, people are different. Like we're uniquely structured beings. And so the first part of the program, I call it the foundation. I really lay out for people and this is from my own, again, this all comes from like my own experience and my own journey, what worked for me. But I lay out like, okay, like this is who you are, and how do you come to know that? How do you come to really know that and own that? Because we can intellectualize about something all day, but intellectualizing about things, that's not knowing. To know something, you have to experience it. So in the program, I lay this stuff out, and then it's like, how do you experience this and really know this, know who you are, know your gifts, like know your talents, know how you thrive in the world, and also understand and tap into like this inner knowing that you have, the guidance you have within, the creativity that you have within. And
Mm.
then in the second part of the program is where I get into thoughts and how you can harness the power of your thoughts to serve you, because that is obviously there's so much out there on thoughts, and what a lot of people, what's common is that people are using their thoughts against themselves in a sense. And so it's an understanding of how do I use my thoughts to powerfully serve me in profound ways. And so that's
Okay.
how yeah.
That is amazing. Oh, well, Kara, how can people get in contact with you?
The best way is through my website. It's www.karanicolebitar.com. So it's just my name, karanicolebitar.com. And on there is my contact information, and I offer free discovery sessions. So if people want to learn more, they can simply sign up for a session, and we'll really get into like what is it that they're wanting and how can they bring that about, and will these programs benefit them. And then people can also sign up for my yoga classes. I live stream them. They can sign up for those on my website. So that's really the best way to get in contact with me.
Fantastic. We will include all of those in the show notes. It has been an amazing journey and a pleasure having you on the podcast to really understand yourself and your journey, and whether you're unhappy or happy in your career. Regardless of that, you can still come to know and to use your many talents. Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Hey everyone, Michelle Seidling here at Food Experience Unplugged. Are you enjoying the Food Experience Unplugged podcast and are ready to ramp it up a level? Then it's time to go premium. With a premium podcast membership, in addition to all the great podcast episodes you know and love, you'll receive additional bonus content and exclusive interviews from many of our podcast guests. You'll receive a live Q&A access each month where I'll address questions pertaining to holistic health and how you can start your journey. You'll also receive weekly shorter video clips with information on tips, tricks, and strategies to get started, to build consistent habits, and to take charge of your health. Go premium today. I'll see you there.